Hey everyone, Mark DeJesus here. Welcome to this broadcast. Today, I want to talk about working through procrastination. You got some procrastination in your life? Maybe it's time to get a little bit of insight into what's going on, what's happening. And I pray today will be a blessing to your life and your journey. If what I'm talking about bears witness with you and what God is doing in your life, check out markdejesus.com, where I have regular updates of video and content and lots of resources that you can take advantage of. And you can also support these videos if they are a blessing and a help to you. So with that in mind, let's get into procrastination. Do you have things in your life that you'd like to see happen, but you keep putting them off? Things that keep getting delayed. Procrastination is typically delaying off the action on something that you look at and go, I should be doing that, or this should be taking place, or I'd really like this to happen. But there's this conflict going on, this procrastination happening. And there might be a whole list of things going on that you're looking at and going, well, I'm putting off taking care of myself, maybe a new practice that I think would be very helpful for me. Maybe it's as simple as cleaning your room or organizing a closet. Maybe it's putting off getting help. Maybe it's putting off having that conversation with someone that you need to have. Maybe it's starting a new project or stepping into a new opportunity. Or there's something that you have this tension about even starting it, getting into it, getting things going, stretching yourself, learning something new. It often has to do with new things, new practices, new habits, new mindsets, or new choices, new decisions that we need to make. So we end up putting it off. Now, what I'd like to do in this video is get into some reasons. And what I want to do is speak to your heart. You could certainly go online and self-help your way into all kinds of insight and understanding. I want to kind of speak to the heart of the battleground, to graciously talk to this battle. Because most of the time when I hear about procrastination, a lot of people like just beating themselves up. And maybe what I share here today can actually empower you to get more to the heart of what's going on and how God can begin to lead you into some new steps. And maybe there's just one takeaway that you'll gain from what I share here. Biggest reason that we procrastinate is perfectionism. And I have been harping on this because I have scores of people. I'm not a perfectionist, but as you begin to get to the symptoms of how perfectionism works, slowly over time, we're all starting to be aware of, you know what? I have this thing of just right that follows me. I talk about OCD and the perfectionism of just right. I need my thoughts just right. I need this thing just right. We have this expectation. Everything needs to be just right before I can get it started. I've got to understand it completely before I do it. I've got to feel like I have it together. This sense of just right. It torments people. And it's tied to our sense of love. Perfectionism is tied into how we feel like we belong and how we feel like we're going to be validated and loved. We got to do things just right or we won't be loved or we won't be accepted. It's a common driving force in our lives, and it stems back to childhood. It gets reinforced many times in our faith grid, and it also gets reinforced in society, in what you present and what you achieve, and it can't be flawed and can't make mistakes, and everything needs to be just right. And so we don't take a step forward many times because we're like, I need to know exactly what I'm doing and know that I'm going to be able to do it just right, or else I need that certainty, or else I'm not going to start it at all. This all or nothing mentality is a big driving force of perfectionism, a black and white mentality. Man, I got to be an expert. I got to know it all. Here's the thing that I think underlies the breaking of procrastination. If I was to summarize how to break procrastination in your life, I think one of the main things I would say is you learn best in practice. You learn actually in taking the step and doing and adjusting as you go, whether it's a new project, a new habit, a new mindset, or stepping into a whole new job or a whole new kind of way of living. We learn best through doing. And many of us are so used to kind of just getting information, and we're stacked up with information overload. Many of you, your books are just piled up in your library, right? Yes, yes, I'm talking to you. Your bookshelves are packed. You've got so many DVDs and CDs. Some of you even got tapes, cassette tapes. You got cassette tapes piled piled up back there. If you don't know what cassette tapes are, don't worry about it. Cassette tapes, maybe even some records or some 8 tracks of something, right? You got all this stuff and courses. We're overloaded in information. We're under in application. And where our greatest learning is actually in the practice, in the doing, in the stepping out. But we're so afraid. We're so afraid, but you learn actually in the activity. I appreciate reading the scriptures and seeing various people in the Bible who took the step out. Peter took a step out and he walked on water. And we look at Peter and we go, oh, he fell down, he sunk in because he took his eyes off Jesus. It's like, wait a second, you're in the boat. It's easy to criticize. He stepped out. And so I think the beauty in Peter's journey is learning in the action. Peter made a lot of mistakes, denying Jesus, putting his foot in his mouth a lot. He's the guy Jesus says, get behind me, Satan. How'd you like that on your experience portfolio? On the day of Pentecost, he's the guy who stands up and addresses the people in a move of the Holy Spirit that was taking place there. It wasn't because he was perfect, but he took action and he learned through experience the beauty and the grace of God. That God's desire is not perfect execution of you just stepping out and making it happen precisely. That is just an absolute myth. It's learning in relationship as you go, but perfectionism won't let you learn in action. So you take a step, and if it doesn't seem like it's going right, you backpedal. Don't even bother. And it really it reveals our lack of mentoring. It reveals like the bondage that we have, and that it's all the shame that covers us about even taking those kind of steps. So perfectionism is something that we all have to recognize. The second thing I just want to say, this kind of just an observation. Many times there's things we go, I want to do this, but it's really not that important, or maybe it's not a passion for you, or maybe it's not even meaningful to you. You kind of feel like you should. Sometimes I'll show people a project. You show somebody a project that I'm working on, and they'll look at it and they'll go, oh yeah, I gotta, they'll start like going, yeah, I got this project that I have to do. I just haven't done it. And I'm like, well, do you want to do it? Does it have to be done? No. Do you even enjoy doing that? Sometimes we put an expectation, we look out of what we think we should be doing. We look around and maybe I should be doing this, maybe I should be doing that. And I'm procrastinating and putting off, and like, maybe it's not that important. And so I tell people, maybe, I like going out and mowing the lawn and taking care of my lawn. And you sit there and go, oh, I should probably do this and this weeds, and I keep putting it off. Well, maybe that's not something for you. And maybe you have to, get a landscaper or get somebody to cut the grass, or, you know what I mean? It's like, sometimes we put a weight on ourselves of things we feel like should be done. And maybe you need to reevaluate your priorities so you can get back to what's truly, truly important. For me, those kind of activities are very refreshing. I enjoy them. So it's not necessarily a drudgery. I love to go outside. I like to be outside in nature and do those things. And I know that it does a lot for my heart and for my life, right? So that's just something to consider. Are you pushing yourself in an expectation of something that's really, maybe it's not you, or it's not a passion for you, and maybe that needs some feedback. We got to ask a friend, is this kind of fit me? But something to think about. I think the third thing we have to realize is a lot of times what fuels procrastination, putting off, there's a lack of motivation, and there's a lot of signs that depression is going on. And this needs to be looked at with grace. It needs to be looked at with kindness. And when I use the word depression, I'm not necessarily narrowing in on, a clinical depression. I use it as a general term. It can mean a lot of different things. It could be a season you're going through. It could be long-term depression. It could be just, but here's what I observed. I observed that with perfectionists, and there's a huge mass of us that are in that category of battle. Underneath the perfectionism is an unaddressed depression. And they're under pressure. And I've noticed too, I'll take this further, many people who struggle with obsessive compulsive, that they actually have an underlying depression. It affects their mood, and it makes them more vulnerable to these intrusive thoughts or these disturbing things that they focus in on, and they never actually get the opportunity to pause and go, wait, I have some depression that I need tending to. I've seen this over and over and over again. They're just like, I don't know. I don't feel like my fervor for God is there. I don't feel like this and that. And so I keep putting things off. It's like, wait a second. Are you going through depression? Because maybe that's what needs some tending to. And maybe you need some help spiritually in your relationship with God, also mentally and in your thought patterns that might be feeding this state, and also understanding your body, what's happening in your body, what does your body need? Of course, when you hear my materials, I'm all about the all-round approach. I'm not like just it's all this, or it's all this. It's all of it, and learning it all, because you're very complex, but yet simple. I know I said a lot there. What do I mean by you're complex yet simple? You're complex in that there's so much to your wiring, so much that's going on. But yet there's something very simple about relationship love, relationship healing, learning to be loved, learning to love others. That's why I say, our brokenness can be so complicated, but healing is often leading us back to the simple, to the foundational, right? So maybe underlying all this is a depression. And many perfectionists have an underlying depression that's never tended to, because they're always focusing on the pressure that they keep putting off. They're exhausted and burnt out. And they use terms like burnout. I'm burned out. Yeah, burnout looks a lot like depression. And that may be a factor, because the Bible says hope deferred makes the heart sick. So you could sit there and I think I can. But when that hope gets delayed in our lives and you get worn out by it, you're worn out by expectation, worn out, and you kind of just numb out a bit. But the Bible says when desire is conceived, it is a tree of life. And see, when desire comes back, procrastination's not as much of an issue, because you start fueling desire. And instead of I have to or I should, you start moving into like, I get to. And for many of you, I'm praying that God will minister to you in your battle of depression to comfort you, to nurture you, to heal, because there's often in depression things that need to be tended to, that need some time, that have not been addressed for a long period of time. God will tenderly, in kindness, help you navigate that so that desire can return. So procrastination doesn't need to be a constant enemy that you're battling. So it's important to recognize. The fear of failure drives procrastination. Specifically, the mindset of failure and mistakes are unacceptable. I've had to face this numerous times in my life and journey. Trust me. You know what? You want to know why? Because failure told me this is not a mistake, I'm a mistake. Failure told me it's a voice of shame combined with fear. Not that I failed, it's I am a failure. It's not that this is a mistake, it's the end of the world. It's not something that I can learn in. So you avoid anything that shows you could take a risk and be shamed because you're going to look like a failure. So it really feeds that internal voice. Now, where'd that come from? Well, it's performance-driven living. It's lack of unconditional love and nurture. And I'll pause for a second, because many of our men out there, because I have a heart for our men, and I'm praying for an awakening in many hearts of men, because they've grown passive, and it's beyond procrastination. It's a spiritual, emotional passivity. And a lot of it has to do with not being fathered, because part of the Father's love is that he loves you, he believes in you, and he empowers you, and he walks alongside and helps you. So many men, they get married and they don't have any equipping in their life. So they don't have relational language, emotional language to initiate great conversations. Their wives are struggling. They feel like their husbands are there, but they're not really there. They're busy at work, but they're not really present at home. They're not really leading. They're not taking initiative. And there's this lethargy that they're under, just this kind of sluggish apathy, sometimes passivity, just not totally there. And there's aspects of his heart where adventure hasn't been awakened in him. And he hasn't been trained and equipped to step up to something and go, I have what it takes, and go after it and learn. So many men avoid learning new projects, learning new skills. They get married and they don't want to learn how to do fix-it things in the house. They might make good money so they can just call someone else, which is fine. But I'm saying, how much of that do we do out of avoidance of, if I do it, I'm going to mess things up, and instead of learning? instead of taking action and learning. So I found in my journey, there's many moments where I'm like, I'll be honest, I have no idea what I'm doing. But I had to face this fear of failure and say, I've got to learn. Now is my time to learn. When I became a husband, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to learn. When I became a father, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to learn. Many stages in my life, whether it's publishing books or developing videos or recording things or so many things, I just had to say, let me try and see what happens. And I think that for many men, they're tormented by, if I take a step and it doesn't work out, I am a failure. And we need to be released from that because it's a very, very debilitating mentality that's just going to hold you back. And so where's the fear of failure holding you back? I think we're also held back too by the need for the feeling to be there. I need that feeling to be there, and then I'll take the step. We do that in a lot of things. I need to feel that love, and then I'll love somebody. I need to feel that good thing, and then I'll take the step. I need to feel like, talking to God, and then I'll talk to God. I need to feel, good about this relationship, and then I'll take a step and be kind towards someone. I need to feel, and then I'll know that I'm doing better. Once I feel it, and a lot of times the feeling of the new takes a while to catch up. It's not just going to be there. We don't know how to do things when the feeling isn't there. We haven't been conditioned that it's okay. Well, I'm not into it. It's all right. Just take a step. Take a step because that may be holding you back. And that's goes back to how was healthy discipline, loving discipline in our lives cultivated. Parents, one of the things that we're charged to do is to create an atmosphere of love and empowering discipline where we help our kids stick with things. You're going to start this habit. You want to do this thing, and you're going to stick with it for a while and commit to it. And maybe long term, you want to do something else, but we're going to stick with this because you want to learn how to make a decision, stick with it, and not just start, quit, never start, all that kind of stuff that goes on. I think that's a big one. And many of you're waiting for the feeling. And sometimes you just got to step up. Step up and take one step. Not this big giant step. A lot of times just one simple step. And that's really all that's needed to build some momentum. Many of you might be actually addicted or conditioned, and you're used to the stress of constantly putting things off. You procrastinate to create a pattern of stress in your life. It sounds weird, but many people do that, especially coming up from dysfunctional homes, or you were raised in homes with addictions or unsafe homes or trauma and various forms of trauma. And so you have this pattern of stress in your life. And you notice a lot of people, they'll go, yeah, I do my best when under stress. So they procrastinate and then last minute do something, and it doesn't bring out the best in you. You think it does, but it's a lot of drama you're creating. And it's very unloving. Because it puts stress on you, it puts stress on loved ones, and it creates an intense drama up and down in your life that's not healthy. I also think that procrastination gets fueled because we're not used to facing resistance. When you get used to every day doing something that's a little uncomfortable or a little like something that stretches you, you learn to move towards resistance. And most of us are, we go to our default setting, which we move away from. And I want to encourage those of you that you've got battles that you're struggling with and things that you're facing, and you're going to have to start learning to get comfortable with the uncomfortable, meaning moving towards resistance, moving towards pain, moving towards that discomfort. And the goal of life is not just being comfortable all the time. The goal in life is stretching, learning, growing, stepping into new, developing our hearts, letting God work on us. And I'm not talking about busy. I'm not talking about driven craziness. I'm not talking about jam-packed days. I'm talking about just taking that step. Somebody said to me a while back when I was asking for some feedback on what they were learning in our coaching time together. And this person said to me, you know what, Mark, you've helped provide me for is healthy and empowered movement through what I'm doing, what I'm going through. And it wasn't like major steps and like all this amazing overnight, like all the kind of stuff that we look for. But it was just some movement because I felt stuck. And now I feel movement. And sometimes working through some of the things I'm sharing today are going to be important to that. I think, though, it's so important to remember that for many of you, you'll say, no one taught me to practice, to learn by practicing. Maybe no one, or this wasn't a dominant influence in your life. You don't learn in a classroom. You learn by actually practicing doing it, activating it. And for many, they weren't taught that. God works with taking a step. He's a God who honors faith, right? And I think that he honors faith, and this may hit some of you. Oh, what? I think God honors faith more than he does you doing things just right. He does. Because we learn in the action, and he gets excited about our faith being exercised. Like I said, we could criticize Peter for sinking in the water, but he stepped out and walked. He took the invitation. And I believe God honors, because he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him, but he also, his frequency of activity is building of our faith, right? So I want to encourage you just taking a step. A stationary car, when it's sitting, you ever try turning the wheels while it's sitting stationary? It's like, but when that car's moving and turning, it's so much easier, right? So God will work, and he's so good and gracious about just kind of navigating with us. Like, all right, over here, it's all right, over here. He's gentle, he's gracious, but he wants us to learn in the steps. When we're stuck, we don't have the opportunity to learn. So sometimes just taking one step can be so important in your life, in your journey. Here's something I want to mention too, because this is something I had to face. I would be struggling with, man, I really want to get this going. I want to make this happen. It's not happening. I'm procrastinating. And it's like, is it procrastinating, or is it really actually not time for this? It's just not time yet. Many of you that are blessed by the videos and audio that I produce, and what a lot of people don't know is a lot of this I wanted to do like 15 years ago. And there were certain books I wanted to write 10 years ago. There were certain things I wanted to do a long time ago. And I would get very, very frustrated because I'm like, it's not happening. And then I'd put extra pressure, and I'd go between procrastinating and then just crashing. We kind of go back and forth, right? Between like heavy drivenness and then passive, we just pass out. And sometimes I had to realize, is that the season for it right now? And I had to learn to take my peace, that maybe this is not for the season right now. You may be putting a procrastination label on something you'd like to see happen, but maybe you take a step back and go, maybe this isn't the season right now. Maybe this isn't the season. Like you're like, I want to get this business going, get this ministry going, and I don't know, I'm procrastinating. Maybe it's just not time yet. And you're putting a lot of pressure and a lot of weight. Maybe just let it be for a minute. Let it simmer and see what happens, see what God does in his process with you. All right. Now, let me give you just some takeaways that I want to encourage in your life and your journey. I think number one, and this is at the top of my list in most things I share, is I want to encourage you to stop beating yourself up for what you're not doing. That's going to get you nowhere. It's going to get you nowhere. Beating yourself up or trying to look at, what am I doing wrong? What's all the stuff I'm not doing that I should be doing? All that stuff that just beats you up. It doesn't work. It doesn't set you free. It doesn't create movement. But I do want to encourage a sober look. Sober meaning aware of what's going on. You're not in denial, denying that it's happening. You're also not drowning in it. You see it for what it is, right? When you see it for what it is with compassion, then you can start to look back and look at some of those reasons I gave you and go, what's it hitting me? Some of you might need to take a compassionate look and go, man, I'm going through some depression and I didn't realize it. And I need to graciously allow God to bring some healing to my heart in those areas of my life. I need to learn, and it's okay. It's not some kind of indictment of accusation against me. It's all right. So then you start to learn to be more compassionate as you look at your heart, to realize what you need. I say to all procrastinators, look at yourself with compassion. What is your heart needing? What is this procrastinating habit revealing that your heart needs? I think that's a good question to ask yourself. I think that I want to encourage you also, face the lies of, quote, just right, that work against you, that perfectionistic mindset. I got to do this just right, or else. I got to be blankety blank, or else. I got to make sure this is, or else. All those pressure cooker of thoughts that tell you that you're not loved unless you do those things. So many times you don't even bother. I want to encourage you as my brothers and sisters to face the fear of failure and shame by allowing yourself to learn through practice. You say, well, I worked this, renewing my mind in this area, and I made some steps, and then I fell back. I failed. No, you didn't. You took a step. When a baby is young, right, and first learning to take steps, do you yell at the baby when he takes a step and goes forward? Little Bobby takes a step, and what do? You go, yeah, and then he falls. It's like, it's okay, you did it. What are we celebrating? Taking a step. And I think that sometimes we need to keep that in mind as children of God. Sometimes we just need that, yeah, you took a step. People will come to me and go, man, Mark, I did this, tried this, and they give me the whole, where they feel like it was a failure. And I'm like, wait a second. You're looking at this through all that inner critic, negativity, self-hate stuff. Wait a second. You took a step. That's amazing. What'd you learn in the practice? What'd you learn in this activation? Many of you have this mindset too of I'm going around the mountain. I'm going around the mountain. Man, I'm going around the mountain. Okay. Well, do you know that sometimes we have to go around the mountain lots of times until we learn? Kind of a different perspective on that, right? Because you're used to beating yourself up. And so I want to encourage you today, face that fear of failure. Face that shame. If you take a step, it's okay. Now, I think it's good to go, I don't know what I'm doing. Humble yourself. And how can you get some help? Now, this is a joke I tell people. If there's a skill you're wanting to learn or something you need to do around the house or something, and you recognize I wasn't equipped in this, maybe you need to ask YouTube dad or YouTube mom. Do you know what that is? Do you know what YouTube dad is? YouTube dad, I'm not talking about a specific channel. Maybe there is one called that. YouTube dad is you go to YouTube to check something probably that your dad should have taught you. YouTube mom to go check something that probably and learn something that mom probably should have taught you. Maybe it's learning how to do some kind of fix thing in the house, something on your car, something that needs work, in your development, or something that you'll need to learn to cook, or learning how to do something financial, or all the things I'm listing out. It's amazing how much we didn't learn. Did you learn finances, from your parents? Did you learn, how to be able to work on emotions, work on, how to use a saw, how to use a hammer, how to be able to do simple things. We get so automated in our world of convenience, we often don't know how to do simple things. You may need to use, I joke with people all the time. They're like, how'd you learn that? I said, well, I asked this guy, and then there's a couple things I had to check YouTube dad, just to take, it's just a funny way of saying, it's okay. Some of the top, YouTube videos are stuff of we're afraid to ask for help and afraid to say you don't know. And I tell people, man, I'm not afraid to say I don't know anymore. I welcome that, because then I learn. Even when people are talking and they go, that, and I go, no, could you explain that to me? What do you mean you don't know that? Could fly up in your head, right? It's so what? I can learn today. And I feel like if you'll take on that posture, God will work amazing with that. It's not about what you didn't get. It's about today and about what you can learn. And in humility going, God, I want to learn today so I can take this step. I want to learn. Maybe you struggle with emotions. You don't know how to have a conversation. You don't know. Okay, that's all right. You weren't equipped in it. So how can you learn? And we live in a day and age where there's so much available for you to take in the learning. What I want to tell you though is don't just stack up a bunch of books. Narrow in on what is that's important to me. And I see where God is using this area as a way to build my confidence, to build my faith. I remember when we moved into our house, one of the things that needed to be redone was a deck. Now, I'd worked construction alongside a team, but never done a project like this myself. And between YouTube and just asking some questions and doing some research, but you know what it really took? Just taking a step. And I had such a great time rebuilding that deck and putting it together, and all that went along with it. And it led me to many other projects and many other things. And it brought out so many great opportunities of building confidence. And I think for many of you, what you need is a confidence building in your life because your confidence has been stripped down. And so what I encourage is I'll leave you with two things. One is try to make a practice where you do one thing a day that stretches you. Just one thing that you don't really want to do, but you know is good for you. And maybe it's today, like maybe it's an exercise. You just go, I'm just going to do it. Or maybe it's that phone call. You're like, I don't want to talk to people right now, but you go, I need to make this call. I'm going to do it. Just one thing. Don't overwhelm yourself, because I encourage bite-sized chunks of things. Doing one thing a day that stretches you. That fifth one that I wanted to say, the first one was stop beating yourself up for what you're doing and not doing. 2 is face the lies of just right that work against you. 3, face the fear of failure and shame by allowing yourself to learn through practicing. 4, do one thing a day that stretches you. And 5, I'll say this, is take bite-sized chunks of action. Bite-sized chunks of action. That's why I say like one thing. Because what happens is you want to put into practice the power of momentum. One thing after the other that allows you to take the steps that you need to take for your journey, for your healing and freedom. So I pray this is a blessing to your life and what God's doing in your life. And if you're recognizing areas of the heart that you want to see God, join you in a deeper way, you want to connect to that, then I invite you to get the heart healing journey, because it is a journey where you can take some steps in that direction. If you're wanting to learn how to be kinder, more loving to yourself, God loves me, I love myself is a great place to start. But it's an honor to speak into your life. I pray this was a blessing. I pray it helped. Even if there's one takeaway, I rejoice with that. So anyways, this is your brother from another mother saying, be loved, experience healing and freedom. But in the meantime, I'm out. See ya.